Greetings. Today, I'll talk about how to make the most out of your Jira investment. So, some organizations are not realizing all the benefits that they could achieve through their use of Atlassian products in general, and especially Jira. So, why is that? Well, to understand the root cause for this problem, let's take a look at some of the things we've seen at some of our clients. I want to go over a few quotes that might sound familiar. We need to standardize our workflows and make them the same for all our teams. A short, standardized bootcamp should be enough training to make our entire organization agile. Or as soon as we baseline our Jira configurations, we need to lock them down. So these ideas may seem to make sense on the surface, but if we look a little deeper, we can see that they're missing something very important. They indicate a focus on minimizing costs at the expense of creating value. So how does Jira create value? Well, we need to think of Jira as the center of our digital nervous system. That means we need to think of Jira less like a simple tool like a hammer or screwdriver, and more like a sports car. Your sports car can take you further and faster than you could ever go before. If you properly maintain it, it'll give you many years of good service. But it's really the whole system of gas stations and service stations and roads that enable you to make the most out of that investment. So my name is Craig Strong, and for the last 10 years, I've been training and coaching organizations to improve outcomes by adopting agile methods. I've worked with the FBI, Social Security, City of New York, and commercial companies to transform their operations from waterfall to Kanban and Scrum. And I'm currently helping the Air Force roll out Jira across an entire directorate, which involves training more than 1,000 people. So I want to take you through some of the tips that I've seen make the biggest difference in maximizing the value of your Jira investment. So first, we need to plan for success. And that starts with an implementation roadmap. Now, we definitely don't need to spend months agonizing over every detail. But what we should do is to understand the 5 or 6 or 10 major types of programs that we need to support. What about programs that have a ton of compliance issues? At the other end of the spectrum, some programs may be doing pure R&D. You may have one group supporting a dozen different production systems and another group with more than 100 people all working together on a single large-scale project. So these groups have disparate needs, and they'll serve as the basis for an initial set of Jira configuration templates. You also need to assign roles and responsibilities. You're going to need a sufficient number of highly skilled Jira administrators to make this work. And at least some of them should be Agile experts as well. Now, beyond that, every single team that uses Jira needs to have a part-time Jira project administrator. Now, that could be anyone on the team, or you could even rotate the job between team members. The project administrator's job is to make sure the information in Jira is accurate and up to date. Their job is to remind the team, hey, let's get that taillight fixed, or it's time to change the oil, or to get a tune-up. So coming out of that process, you should have a series of maybe a dozen or so project templates, which brings us to the second tip. These templates should be tuned and maintained so that they fit your programs like a glove. So your operations teams and others can use a lightweight Kanban approach, while some development teams may want Scrum, and still others may need a bit of both, or they may need to scale up. So let me show you how a properly configured Jira board supercharges your stand-up. So let's take a look at this board. First, you can immediately see the bugs in red, user stories in green, and a blocked card highlighted in yellow. Now, if there are any dependencies, they're listed right on the card. Here we can see this card, ABSS 104, that's blocked, has a dependency on ACES 213, which has not even been started yet. So we've got a problem here. We're dependent on something that nobody's even working on it at this point. However, we've got ABSS 102 to the left that has two dependencies, but both of them are already resolved. One's resolved, one's closed. You can immediately see that right on the front of the card. So we want to encourage collaboration and not discourage it. So if someone doesn't have a ticket of their own, what might happen if their boss walks by and looks at the board and says, I don't see Jim, I don't see your name. What are you doing? That could be uncomfortable. So fortunately, there's a very easy fix. We can list the collaborators right on the front of the card. So let's take a look at ABSS 90. We can see that Taman Suherman is assigned. We can also see that William Smith is a collaborator. So we can also see the progress against the definition of done right up on the front. So for example, let's look at our blocked card, and we can see that though it's blocked, we have managed to complete 3 out of 5 tasks. So last but not least, let's take a look at the quick filters. Most teams ignore these or don't make much use of these, but they're actually incredibly valuable. So take a look here. I can immediately zoom to anything from issues that were carried over from the previous sprint, anything that was recently updated, what's recently been moved, what's been updated since the last time we had our Scrum. Let's take a look at those. Is anything overdue? Maybe fixed date tickets that have a certain date they're due on. We need to see if any of them are overdue or nearly overdue. What about stale tickets? They've been hanging around for a long time and really haven't seen any movement. They might be blocked, but they might not yet be highlighted as blocked. So we need to take a look at those. What about urgent tickets that have maybe a class of service of urgent or a high priority? Finally, we can look at blockers. So blocker is where we are a dependency on someone else. And in fact, we see that indeed, ABSS 85, somebody's waiting for that. Somebody has dependency on that. So we need to, fortunately it's resolved, but we need to let them know that their dependency is now resolved. We can also zoom in on issues that are blocked or have dependencies that are active that are not yet resolved. And we can see, of course, the issue in yellow here. Now that could be important because remember, these Jira boards can get very big and the blocked card might actually be scrolled off the screen. So these quick filters are extremely valuable to immediately highlight issues that we might need to see. Here he goes. This one is with this quick filter, we can immediately find anything that's associated with the web. Maybe 2 of our web designers are out this week. Well, we better look and see what's going on, what we need to do with respect to the web component. So this is how we can supercharge our Jira board to make our stand-ups much more productive. All right, so which brings us to tip number 3. And tip number 3 is all about continuous improvement. So if you're like me, you may have recurring nightmares about being unable to upgrade to a new version of your enterprise software because of all the customizations we've made over the years. This does not apply to Jira. Jira is built from the ground up to be customized. So the whole design of the system supports migration and customization, where 2 projects can share 90% of their configuration, but still customize where it makes sense. So in our retrospectives, we should be thinking about what changes can we make to Jira to make it an even better fit to our way of working. Maybe we want to add a discovery board to give some structure to our backlog refinement process. Maybe we want to update our workflows so that we can track delays more accurately. Maybe we want to switch from priority to class of service. Kanban teams may be interested in this. Or maybe we have an issue where our peer reviews, it's an important step in our process, but it keeps getting skipped. So imagine creating a new issue type for peer reviews that shows up in orange So all we need to do is look at our board and say, does this story have an orange? Does this story have an orange? Or we're missing an orange here. Makes these issues immediately obvious, and they go away. And that brings us to tip number 4, Jira's rich third-party ecosystem. So there are hundreds of great plugins out there, and there are about 10 that I use on almost a daily basis. So I'd like to highlight 2 of my favorites. The first is a story mapping tool. So story mapping, it's an agile process for quickly brainstorming requirements. I love it because it's so quick and efficient. And one of the biggest problems I've seen when a big program is just starting up is that nobody knows the game plan. There's a lot of confusion, and projects can waste a lot of time trying to get going. So story mapping helps us avoid that problem by helping us quickly rough up a plan. The second is a forecasting tool. So agile projects have a big challenge. Unlike waterfall, we don't create all the requirements up front, but we still need to give accurate predictions. So it turns out that software can be modeled just like biological processes using Monte Carlo simulation. Now, the great thing about this is it just doesn't matter if we're using Scrum or Kanban or any combination. It all works together just fine, and we can get pretty accurate forecasts even early on in the project. So let's take a look at these 2 plugins, starting with story mapping. And I'm going to show you a live instance of Easy Agile, which is the story mapping tool that we like the best. So as you can see, the story map provides a 2-dimensional view of your backlog. Epics across the top, user stories underneath. The epics form kind of a spine, and the user stories are the ribs hanging down from each one. So rather than just a flat backlog, it's showing you things in this 2-dimensional canvas. So how is it laid out? Well, it's laid out in temporal order or functional order, meaning the order in which these operations would typically take place. Now, why do you do that? Simple, because it helps us think about it's just a trick and a technique to help us quickly discover and lay out what our software needs to do. So by laying out all the epics in the order that they would appear or they would be accomplished in a normal scenario, we can immediately see the gaps and we can identify what needs to get done and very, very quickly come up with a 60%, 80% backlog that gets us started. Is it perfect? Of course not. Does it need to be? No, we just need to get started. So let me show you how we can use this. So first of all, notice that what we're seeing here is a bunch of user stories in release 4, a bunch of stories in release 3, and you see we've got a backlog on the bottom. So let's go ahead and add some more issues, some more stories to the backlog. Well, in fact, I can do that just by clicking and typing. And I can type almost as fast as I can think. So you get your subject matter experts in a room with your team, start your story backlog refinement, and away you go. So what we've done is we've picked documentation here. Well, what do we need to do for documentation? Well, we probably need a concept of operations. And after that, we probably need a design guide. And after the design guide, we probably need a user manual. And last but not least, we're probably going to need some errata or some other things. This is an actual example from a project we just completed with the Department of Justice. So here we go. I've got my 4 user stories here. You can see I added them immediately. And now we can do some release planning right in the middle of our backlog refinement by simply dragging and dropping. So when would we need the concept of operations? We probably need that pretty soon. So we're going to go ahead and drag that up into release 3. What about the design guide? Well, we may not need that right away. That's more for long-term viability of the program. And so let's put that in release 4. What about the user manual? Well, we've got some beta testers right away, and they've already been saying that they want a manual. So let's put that here in release 3. And the errata, we're going to go ahead and leave that in the backlog because we may not need that for a little while. So, and by the way, looking at the documentations, it's not really something we do as part of this training. You can see I've got a training software here. So we're going to go ahead and move documentation over to the right so that, and you see all of its user stories automatically moved with it. So what you can see here is that you can very, very quickly reorder things in your backlog and just see the big picture. That's what it really gives you, the ability to see the big picture and very, very quickly add to your backlog. And the best part is when you're done, you simply click over to the standard normal Jira backlog, and there everything is, just as if you typed it in the normal way. And that is user story mapping. Second, I'd like to show you forecasting. So our favorite forecasting tool is from a company called Actionable Agile. And let us show you that one here. So when you load in a project information into Actionable Agile, what it does is it shows you kind of a default prediction for when 100 user stories would be done. So let's see what's going on here. So what this tool has done is it's automatically loaded all available progress from your project into its calculations. And based on the frequency and the cadence on which you've been delivering so far, what it says is, okay, here's how long it would take you based on that cadence. If we were to keep going at that exact pace, here's how long it would take you to complete 100 more user stories. So, and you can see that what this is, and it shows it to you in a calendar view. So you can see here, July 2021, there's a 95% chance of finishing. So in our particular instance, what we've done is we've estimated that to complete a major milestone, let's say migrating off the mainframe or migrating away from a legacy software, it's going to take between 400 and 500 user stories to do that. So let's go ahead and type in 400, and you can see it instantly changes and does a projection for us, which leaves us in March of 2022. Now, okay, let's look at the top end. Go to 500, and we can see there we're in May. So what can we tell our project manager and our senior leadership? We can say that there's a 95% chance of us completing between March and May of 2022. And if they ask us, well, you know, this needs to go live by mid 2021. Well, we can look at that and we can say, you know, there is a less than 1% chance of finishing these items by that time frame. It's not me, it's the tool. So it could make these kinds of conversations a little less stressful. And the great news is this is based on solid statistical techniques. So that brings us to tip number 5, which is probably the most important tip of all, keeping it clean. So we all know that Agile teams need to continuously refactor their code and build automated tests. Otherwise, they build up what's called technical debt. So what happens to teams using Jira? Well, if you aren't careful, you can end up with backlogs littered with old, obsolete cruft, releases that aren't properly closed, items that never get updated, basically tool debt. So the solution is the same as doing your dishes. You know, you have to do some cleanup every single day. So with Jira, we can create a set of dashboards that automatically detect these bad situations so that they can get cleaned up immediately. They never have a chance to build up, and it only takes a few minutes every day. So all we have to do is leverage Jira's built-in query language, JQL, and use that to highlight problem areas, and then automatically email the results of those queries to the guilty party. So here we can see We have undefined stories. Maybe those are stories with no description. We have 2 of them. We can email those to whoever added those user stories. What about complete issues missing a resolution? That's a problem. Flagged issues in the last and the current sprint. Done issues that don't mean the definition of done. That's a problem. There's 2 issues that are done. They're moved into the done column, but they don't meet the definition of done. That's a violation of our process. So maybe the issue simply hasn't been updated, or maybe there's something deeper going on. But in any event, we need to find out what's going on there. So those 2 need to be emailed to whoever did those. So with this kind of a tool built into Jira, we can automatically detect these issues and email them to the guilty party. So if you add a story without acceptance criteria, you're getting an email. Release a version that still has open issues, you're getting an email. So we want to take care of stuff like this right when it happens, so it never becomes a problem. So I hope you see that there's just no reason to struggle with a poorly tuned Jira. With the right care and feeding, Jira can be a significant corporate asset that can help you transform your business. The streamlined interface reduces learning curve and makes Jira a pleasure to use, which increases adoption. You get more people using Jira, putting better information into it. You get happier, more productive teams, reliable forecasts, and much more accurate information to make business decisions. So here at Ariel, we have heard a lot of positive feedback from our customers in the military so far, and we're just getting started. So think about which of these tips may make sense for your organization. So here are some of the references for some of the plugins and techniques that I spoke about. And with that, I want to thank you very much.